a seeming building-by-building search. Any evidence of that where you are?
That I can't attest to, but I wouldn't be surprised. I'm more towards the south of campus, but a dense part of the police force is still at north of campus, trying to sort everything out.
All right, Brian, we appreciate the account and your vivid description. Stay well, stay safe, and do as the Buckeye Alert says: shelter in place and obey the instructions of police. Brian Tiemann is a junior at Ohio State University. Kendrick is an academic advisor on the second floor of Watts Hall when all of this unfolded. And Kendrick, it sounds like you may have seen or heard pretty much everything that's been going on.
Yeah, like I said, I heard 4 shots, and I got up, and I looked out my window, and I saw the students running past my window, so they said he got a gun. So at that point, when I turned around and looked in the opposite direction, down the street where the chemistry building is, I saw the aggressor coming toward the police officer. And as he came toward the police officer, the police officer shot and killed him. I didn't see if he had a gun or I don't know what he had in his hand.
Kendrick, any we heard from Brian, who's a junior on campus there, that there was a car that tried to mow down people. Does that jive with anything you've seen or heard?
Well, I didn't see any car. Avenue.
All right, Kendrick, we're going to try and get back to you in a little bit. Still having a hard time understanding, but the gist of what he's been telling us is that he heard about 4 gunshots. He heard students yelling from his second floor window that students had a gun, and that he saw an aggressor approach police officers with a gun, and that police officers on the campus of OSU shot and killed the aggressor. We should tell you that we still have no confirmation of any of this or of what unfolded on The Ohio State University to trigger the Buckeye Alert of an active shooter on campus, with students still being told to shelter in place and obey the commands of police. You're listening to live coverage from ABC News. I want to turn to ABC News consultants John Cohen and Steve Gomez. John, from what you've heard from the eyewitnesses, what do you make of this so far?
Well, at the risk of stating the obvious, I mean, it's clear that something's going on that campus. As I said earlier, I think what law enforcement on the scene is trying to nail down is whether they still have an active situation or whether they can transition into the investigative mode. I'm hearing that, ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, and the FBI, have arrived on scene. I wouldn't necessarily read too much into that in today's environment. They typically respond very quickly to these types of incidents so they can provide support to the local authorities as they conduct the investigation and determine who should have jurisdictional control over the event.
And let me turn, John, to Steve Gomez, bring him into this conversation. Steve, as you listen to what may be unfolding, we're getting word that this actually could have been a serious thing here with potentially a car, if the eyewitness accounts are true, steering towards students, gunfire, maybe a knife pulled. What do you make of it?
Well, unfortunately, this brings to mind the attack that occurred recently in Nice, France, where the terrorist suspect used a big truck and mowed down a number of people in the street. Not saying that that's what we have here, but I'm sure that's one of the first things that the FBI, ATF, and local law enforcement are thinking. The fact that that occurred out there in Europe, and there had been information indicating that ISIS had wanted people, their followers, to take a similar type of attack, here in the U.S. or in the Western areas. So that's one of the first things that comes to mind. And the investigation has to be conducted. We got to figure out who this person is. If they did stop him and kill him, got to figure out what his background is and so on, his or hers. But the fact is that a car made it over the curb and started to hit people, and that's a big concern there.
Steve Gomez and John Cohen, both ABC News consultants with strong law enforcement backgrounds, as we continue to understand what unfolded at Ohio State University a short time ago. There's a Buckeye Alert, as it's called, warning of an active shooter on campus. It was followed by messages to shelter in place and obey the commands of police. A law enforcement source is warning parents and others not to call students who may be on campus, saying it's important that those phones don't ring because these students may be hiding or sheltering, and calling them could make their phones ring aloud. Instead, text anybody they're looking to contact, and don't make assumptions if people on campus don't respond because it's probably a bit chaotic. Now, we should say, despite that guidance from a law enforcement official, it does not appear to be all that chaotic just based on some of the images that we're seeing. There's a lot of emergency vehicles on campus, but so far, no confirmation from Ohio State as to what exactly unfolded or what caused 7 people, according to the Columbus Fire Department, to be transported to hospitals. But the alert remains for an active shooter on campus at Ohio State University. And we have been speaking with an eyewitness to all of this, Brian Tiemann, who's a junior at OSU. Brian, any more word in the last few minutes as to what may be going on?
No, I haven't heard much. Just still on lockdown, still waiting for instruction. But all I've received news from my friends of what they're seeing on the news. They say that one of the shooters has been taken down. I guess I can't confirm that nor deny it because I'm not really there to see it.
We did have one of your classmates talk about seeing a shooter approach the police and get shot and killed. But again, none of this has been confirmed. What else are your friends saying?
Yeah, I can't confirm any of that. They're saying that basically all the things that we know, everybody's on lockdown. That that one of the shooters is still at large. But again, this is all speculation.
Brian Tiemann's a junior at Ohio State University, now sheltering like so many others on campus after an alert of an active shooter on campus. Brian and other eyewitnesses spoke to us about hearing shots fired. Brian in particular saw a car coming around a corner and trying to mow down students who had gathered outside after a fire alarm was pulled. But so far, the only confirmation that something has happened from an official source has been the Columbus Fire Department saying that they took 7 people to the hospital. How they were hurt or what their conditions might be were not made clear. And now Columbus Fire Department confirming that 8 people have been transported to hospitals, but they're still not saying just how these people were hurt. We know that federal agents from ATF, from the FBI, are all on their way to respond, giving us an indication that this is serious enough to warrant attention from the feds. John Cohen is an ABC News consultant, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security. No surprise that all these federal agents are responding, but that does give us a sense that there's really something to this.
Well, over the past several years, as law enforcement around the country has had to confront increasingly these types of mass casualty attack situations, the level of cooperation between federal agencies and local law enforcement and state agencies has really increased. And so, again, when an event like this, hits the airwaves, the local federal officials will automatically respond to provide investigative support, crime scene support, and they'll, as they conduct the investigation, they'll make a determination, was this a federal crime like terrorism, or is it a local matter that the locals will have primary responsibility for investigating?
John Cohen, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security, now an ABC News consultant, as we continue to monitor developments at the Ohio State University in Columbus, where the fire department has taken 8 people to the hospital. They haven't said why. They haven't said what the condition of these people has been, but they have said 8 people have been taken to hospitals after an alert went out across campus for an active shooter. A number of eyewitnesses have told us that they heard gunshots. We've also seen reports of a possible stabbing on campus, and one eyewitness say that they saw the driver of a car who tried to mow down students pull either a knife or a gun before shots rang out just a short time ago within the last hour. I'm Aaron Katursky. You're listening to live coverage from ABC News. The Ohio State University campus alert stays, and the latest from the school emergency management department is that students should shelter in place and obey the directions of the local police. We're hearing from law enforcement sources that anybody who wants to reach someone on campus should text, not call, because calling could cause phones of people in hiding to ring aloud. The FBI is at the scene, the ATF is on its way, and a number of students are simply waiting for instructions. One of them is Brian Tiemann, who's a junior at OSU. Brian, as you continue to wait for word, we know your phone must be lighting up with word from friends. Anybody giving you any information at this point?
Just pictures from the news about. I saw pictures of the shooter, or the supposed shooter on the ground, and then a tarp being pulled over him. So I'm going to presume that he's dead. I went back towards the scene just out of curiosity, some stupid curiosity, and I saw the car. The car was still there, and it had clearly smashed into that brick wall, and they had not moved it. They were putting up caution tape when I went over there a second time, but then I was escorted into the building that I'm in now.
And that's where you are with what, other students?
Yeah, about 50 to 75 other students.
Okay. We had heard from your very vivid account of seeing this car, I think a Honda, you said, right? A small car?
Honda Civic.
Honda
I
Civic.
don't know how I know that, but it's a Honda Civic.
All right. Coming around the corner near Watts Hall after a fire alarm had been pulled, and you take it from there.
After the fire alarm had been pulled and the car came, it turned onto the street. Looked like it made a sharp turn. It clipped the sidewalk, but then the driver took the car completely onto the sidewalk, mounted the sidewalk, and then pressed on the gas as hard as he could for what it looked like, targeting students. I saw him make contact with 3 or 4 before he smashed into the low brick wall right outside of Watts Hall. Then I saw students scattered. I saw a few on the ground. I saw a few students on the ground still, and that's when I saw a shooter come out of the car. Couldn't tell what he had in his hand. Could have been a weapon. Could have been a cell phone. I can't be sure. But when I saw everybody running, I took off as well. Went around the corner of the building across the street and heard 5 or 6 gunshots ring off. Could have been from cops. Could have been from the suspect, but I can't be sure.
Brian Tiemann is a junior at Ohio State University, sheltering in a building with a number of classmates all over campus. An alert has gone out to shelter in place and to await instructions from police after an active shooter was reported on campus. The Columbus Fire Department tells us 8 people have been taken to the hospital. It's not clear for what or how serious their conditions may be. But from what Brian tells us, a fire alarm was pulled at Watts Hall, a mechanical engineering building, from what we understand, and students came out of the building. A car sped up towards the crowd. At least one driver got out of the car with some kind of weapon, and as Brian fled the scene, he says he heard a number of gunshots. A number of other witnesses also spoke of hearing gunshots before seeing a tarp get pulled over the body believed to be the shooter. Now, that doesn't mean that this is over, whatever it is, because we know students are still being told to shelter in place, and the campus appears, at least parts of it, to be locked down. We see columns of emergency vehicles, but no panicked movement from what we can see in any particular place. One eyewitness told us that he saw in the cafeteria a number of officers with long guns, heavy weapons, trying to figure out, what was all going on, going from building to building and room to room, as Ohio State University appears to cope with some kind of an attack. But the campus has not exactly said what it is that had gone on or what how serious it may be. For help understanding all of this, we turn to our consultants in law enforcement, John Cohen, Steve Gomez. Steve, let's start with you. FBI has arrived on the scene along with ATF. What are their first steps?
Well, the first thing they're trying to figure out is this attack or is there an active shooter that is continuing on? It sounds like there may be one suspect down, but you always have to go into this thinking that there may be more than one suspect. So right now they have to contain the area of OSU. If they could figure out where specifically there may be potential suspects, then they could try to isolate that area, create a perimeter, and then just go room to room and search. And I think it's a very good idea that they put out that law enforcement warning for parents and friends and family members not to call into students, to text them. That also indicates that they do not feel that this has been resolved there at OSU. So they have to contain, go in there, room by room, very methodically, and search, make sure that there is no other suspects that are roaming around there. And at the same time, they're going to start the investigation. I mean, which this sounds like it is going to be a major investigation. There's just a lot going on, but there's a lot for us to really learn before we can determine what we really have there.
Steve, I'm reminded that Friday is a year since San Bernardino, right?
Yes, exactly. That is coming up this week, and these terrorist organizations tend to focus on anniversaries. We're in the holiday season. Thanksgiving just passed. We got Christmas, New Year's Eve coming up. So yes, this is a very sensitive time for us here in the U.S. and in other areas worldwide. But it's also a time when terrorists may want to take advantage of this period and commit an attack, something that looks like what we have here, not knowing if this is a terrorist attack, but this could potentially be one.
And this has been a time of heightened concern. Let's bring John Cohen into the conversation. John, the other day, just before the holidays, the Department of Homeland Security issued a bulletin containing almost no information about anything specific, but just a general warning to be vigilant. Is this the kind of thing that the department may have been talking about?
It's unclear. I mean, I think to build on what Steve was talking about, part of what's complicated and challenging for law enforcement is the way that the threat has evolved, in that we don't always need to be solely concerned about terrorist groups overseas plotting an attack. We have to be concerned about individuals who will become self-inspired and will take action on their own and independent of any terrorist group. And I think that's the biggest concern that the FBI and Department of Homeland Security has been trying to raise as it's been sending out these bulletins to state and local law enforcement. But again, obviously what we know now is that some type of incident took place. We have people who have been injured. Law enforcement is going to take steps to ensure that the immediate threat has been dealt with. They're going to clear those buildings anyway. They have to. Just it's reasonable and prudent. And then they'll begin the investigation. In the hours ahead, we will learn exactly what inspired this person or people to carry out this attack.
John, it's confounding in a way because Ohio State just had record attendance for a college football game hosting the Michigan Wolverines, more than 100,000 people. That's the kind of thing that gets law enforcement's attention, not the Monday after.
Right, but I mean, there are things about this incident from the reporting thus far that that are very interesting. I mean, the activation of a fire alarm to allegedly get people out onto the street, the use of a car, and possibly some other type of weapon to cause casualties. These types, big events like football games, the football game that you mentioned, are highly secure and much more hardened these days. There's much more security in place. And that's why we see individuals who are focused on carrying out this type of event selecting so-called softer targets, places where there isn't as much security and that they can still cause mass casualties.
John Cohen, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security, now an ABC News consultant there with Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, and now an ABC News consultant. It has been more than a half an hour since the Ohio State University Emergency Management Department has issued any update to its initial guidance that students should shelter in place and follow the directions of police because of an active shooter on campus. This all unfolded about an hour or so ago. Nothing has been confirmed by OSU police, although eyewitnesses have told us that there is a suspect dead. And in fact, the Columbus Department of Public Safety confirms now that one suspect is dead, and the search continues for other possible suspects. The assumption always is that there's more than one, but the Columbus Department of Public Safety says one suspect is dead. The Columbus Fire Department has told us that 8 victims have been transported. We're not sure how they were injured or the seriousness of their conditions, but 8 victims have been taken to the hospital, and one suspect is dead, with the search for other possible suspects ongoing at Ohio State University. And you can see that reflected in the long columns of emergency vehicles with lights flashing, although no apparent panic and no real movement showing anybody running or giving any indication that something is still going on. To recap what eyewitnesses have told us, a car was seen screaming around a corner heading toward Watts Hall, where all of this seems to be centered. A fire alarm, the eyewitness says, was pulled. Students had come outside, and that car then jumped the sidewalk and tried to mow down as many students as possible. From there, at least one person gets out of the car, holds a weapon, could be a knife, could be a gun, although this eyewitness concedes it could also have been a cell phone. He just doesn't know. At that point, the eyewitness takes off, hears gunshots, and 2 other eyewitnesses have told us that they also heard gunshots before an eyewitness told us that he saw a body covered by a tarp in the street. And now the Columbus Department of Public Safety says one suspect is dead at Ohio State University. I'm Aaron Katursky. You're listening to live coverage from ABC News. I want to turn back to Brian Tiemann, a junior on campus who's been giving us these vivid accounts of what happened and really our only window into what unfolded, since law enforcement has not given us any sense of what triggered the alert of an active shooter on campus. But Brian, as you continue to look at your phone and check out your messages from classmates, what are you hearing and what are you being told?
Well, in a chat with my friends, I've gotten outlandish news, if you will. It says one of my friends says professor in the building slashed with a machete. Unreal. So I don't know if there's any truth to that. But that's the most recent news from my friends that I've gotten.
So that a professor was slashed
with a machete.
In addition to the car trying to mow down students and gunshots being fired. I mean, it's extraordinary.
I'm assuming that happened afterwards. The shooter made it into the building, or the suspect made it into the building, went up and confronted the professor with a machete. But again, I can't confirm any of that.
Study. Now, we hear some voices behind you. Are you still sheltering in place?
Yeah, there's a bunch of students here.
We're also looking now outside of the building where you are. Teams of officers, SWAT and otherwise. We see the local sheriff's department represented, local police, the FBI sending SWAT teams, bomb squad, all measure of emergency responders. But still no real movement. Are you detecting any? Is there any sign that things are continuing?
I haven't looked out a window in a couple minutes or a few minutes, but as I was walking into the building that I'm currently covering in, I saw a handful of cops, a bunch of cop cars around the scene where it happened. I saw ambulances moving up and down the streets. I just saw a bunch of activity. I'm not sure what they're doing right now. I'm not sure if they're surveying the scene or trying to get students out and home safely. But the cops are actively doing something.
All right, Brian, continue to stay well. Thank you. Brian's a junior at OSU and sheltering in place as per the order from the Emergency Management Department at Ohio State University. Students have been told as recently as about 40 minutes ago to shelter in place and to obey the directions of local police. They've confirmed to us that at least one suspect has been shot dead, and the search for other possible suspects is on, although that doesn't appear like there's any movement on the part of the police that indicates there is an additional suspect. But we wait to see what happened at Ohio State University within the last hour or so. Our affiliate here at ABC News, WSYX-TV, has been on the air with their coverage, and let's listen in.
Just in the last couple of minutes, we've actually seen the police helicopters circling overhead here at the scene. We have also seen the Columbus Bomb Squad and several other fire trucks kind of heading out of the scene. In the meantime, the police command post is being set up right here. Again, we're hearing that this situation is at least contained and the victims have been identified. I want to bring in a student. Mike was actually walking. Mike, come on over here. So you first got an alert on your phone, right? Mm-hmm. And then what did you do from there?
Well, I was walking to the library before class, and I was walking down 15th, and the first alert didn't really say anything. It just said, stay safe, run, stay, hide. And then a couple minutes later, we got a report that there was an active shooter on campus. And some people started running up. I was walking down 15th. People started running up 15th. And a couple people were like, don't go to campus. There's an active shooter. But, I mean, I obviously kept walking. And then when I walked by college and I saw the police sirens and stuff, I wanted to kind of find out what was going on.
An eyewitness to our affiliate WSYX television in Columbus, where the police department tells us that at least one suspect has been shot dead at Ohio State University. The search for other possible suspects is on after an alert of an active shooter on campus. 8 victims have been taken to the local hospital. Their injuries aren't clear. It's not clear what got them hurt, and their conditions have not been made clear. And we still don't have any confirmation as to what actually happened on campus. This is the day after, or the day after a weekend of a record crowd for the OSU-Michigan football game. More than 100,000 people. Campus had been certainly buttoned up for that. But here it is the Monday after the holidays, and according to an eyewitness, a fire alarm had been pulled in Watts Hall. He saw a car screaming around the corner, jumping the curb to attack students that had gathered outside after the fire alarm was pulled. And that's when he saw the driver get out, brandish a weapon, and then he heard shots fired. Now, this eyewitness also told us that he has heard from others on campus that a professor had been slashed. That gives us a picture as to what may be unfolding, but again, no official confirmation about any of this. We've just heard from Ohio Senator Rob Portman saying that his thoughts and prayers are with the Ohio State community. Please be safe, listen to our first responders, but no additional information as to what has gone on. ABC News consultants Steve Gomez and John Cohen are with us to help us make sense about all of this. What are the telltale signs, John, that you're sort of going to be looking for here in the next few minutes to understand what happened here?
Well, first thing I just want to say is based on the descriptions that we're hearing and what we're seeing on sort of live TV, law enforcement protocols are that if you still think that there's a shooter that's active inside of a location, you would have people teaming up in twos and threes and going into that building to find that shooter and to neutralize them. So the fact that we have what appears to be SWAT teams staging suggests that they believe that there may not be an active shooter inside the location, but they're going to go and clear the location, as is also the protocol. So the fact that you don't have police officers rushing into the location, we're not hearing continued shooting going on, suggests, to me at least, that the suspect or suspects have been at least contained and the threat has been neutralized at this point. As far as the telltale signs, what they're going to be looking for as part of the investigation is they're going to look into this person's history. They're going to look at their social media footprint. They're going to see if there's any notes or any other type of information that they've left that give some insights onto why they conducted this attack. That'll be one of the first things that investigators will look at. Another thing they'll look at is, was this person in communication with somebody else? Are there other people who were involved in developing this plot and carrying out the attack, or is this just somebody who, for their own reasons, decided to, injure these people?
John, as students continue to shelter in place, the advice has been don't call them, don't try to text them if you must, but you don't want to give away any hiding places. I mean, this still does, as you say, sound like they're not convinced it's over, even though the posture of the officers that we're looking at on images from campus suggests that there's no more urgency. I mean, how do you square those?
Well, even if they if law enforcement is beginning to form the belief that the immediate threat is over, they're still going to operate as if the threat still exists. So the advice not to call students because that could set off ringers and could disclose their location to a potential attacker who may be inside, may be hiding. So, on the one hand, you have, there is sort of an inconsistency, I guess. You have officers not rushing in the building, in teams of 2 and 3, seeking to identify and engage an attacker. You see a much more methodical approach that's taking place right now. But again, until they know for sure, until they've cleared that building room by room, closet by closet, they're going to continue to operate like there is potentially a threat still present.
John Cohen's an ABC News consultant, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security, as we continue to monitor developments at Ohio State University, where at least 8 people have been taken to the hospital. 1 suspect has been shot and killed. But what precipitated all this has not been made clear. Police have only confirmed that a suspect is down and that they are looking for other possible suspects. ABC News consultant Steve Gomez is here with us. It's just after the holidays. It's that time of year. I mean, holiday violence, terrorism, I guess everything's on the table at this point.
Absolutely. And I got to believe that is factoring into law enforcement's response as they are preparing to go in and search and clear OSU campus right now. One of the things that they're also probably considering is the potential for there to be an explosive device. So if that is the case, and if they're thinking along those lines, in addition to having tactical teams, SWAT teams that are going to, start going in and clearing and, making sure no suspect is still there, they're also going to want to have a bomb technician to be right by their side. So as they are clearing these rooms and going through halls and so on, if they find a package or something that looks suspicious that could be a potential explosive, they're going to have those resources there available to go in, analyze what the device or item is, and determine if they need to clear the area for a potential explosive, reaction, or if they are able to go in there and neutralize it. So that's part of what they are probably considering as they are preparing to make entry and to clear the buildings and the general area.
Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant. The FBI is responding. SWAT teams, bomb squad technicians are all coming from the FBI. The ATF also on its way. The governor of Ohio, John Kasich, tweeted out thoughts and prayers to the Ohio State community. Be safe. Listen to first responders. There hasn't been much word from first responders, though, for about an hour now, just telling students to shelter in place and obey the directions of the police. There is one suspect that has been confirmed down, and the search on now for possible other suspects. Police outside do not appear to be terribly alarmed. Portions of campus appear to have been locked down by emergency vehicles, and we know from speaking to several students that they are locked down as well. In fact, one told us of police, heavily armed police, going through a cafeteria looking for suspects. I'm Aaron Katursky. You are listening to live coverage from ABC News. At least 8 people have been taken to the hospital in Columbus, Ohio, after some kind of an incident at Ohio State University, where word went out about an hour and a half ago of what they call a Buckeye alert, warning of an active shooter on campus. Students were told to shelter in place. They were told to obey the rules and instructions of the police, but no confirmation as to what exactly happened on campus. The last word we heard was more than 45 minutes ago from the OSU Emergency Management Department, saying that wait for police officer directions and contact police only if you have information. The information that we do have comes only from eyewitness accounts, saying that this seems to be concentrated in Watts Hall on 19th Street. Watts Hall apparently had a fire alarm pulled, according to an eyewitness, and then as students were gathered outside, a car comes screaming around the corner trying to mow down as many students as possible. The driver gets out, brandishes some kind of a weapon, and what happens from there isn't clear. One witness said that a professor was slashed. Another said he heard gunshots, and then it appears that this shooter or aggressor was shot and killed, and an eyewitness told us of seeing a tarp covering the body now. We know from the Columbus police that that they've confirmed a suspect is down, but they have said that there are other possible suspects they're now looking for. 8 people have been taken to the hospital in Columbus, according to the fire department. WSYX, our affiliate in Columbus, is following. We'll get to their coverage momentarily, and want to turn back to an eyewitness, Andrew, who's a freshman at OSU. Andrew, but last we checked with you, you were in your residence hall. Is that still true?
Not my residence hall, a residence hall, but yes, that is still true.
Okay, and you're sheltering with others. Have you been able to move or get any information?
No, I'm not with anyone. I'm just sitting in a hallway, just sitting on the ground.
Waiting for word. Anybody texting you, calling you?
Yes.
And what are they expressing?
Just everyone's making sure they, I don't know, stuff on Twitter, like what's going on the outside, but I don't know. You really know what's going on, you know?
Andrew, we were losing you there just for a bit. So take us through again, if you would, what you saw, and about an hour and a half ago now, what seems to have started this whole alert. Where were you, and what did you see?
I was on North Campus near the dining hall, walking to my class with headphones in, as I always do, and I just saw people running in all directions. Had no idea what was going on. I actually didn't know what to think. I took my headphones out. I heard 2 or 3 shots. And then a student, like an older guy, just grabbed me and said, "Come with me. We got to go in this building right now." And I've been sitting here ever since. There's just been sirens and helicopters and for the past hour and a half, like you said, going outside.
Andrew, one of your classmates, another freshman at OSU, is Allie, who's on the line with us. Allie, where are you, and what are you seeing?
Right now I'm in my dorm. There's not really that much activity outside of my window that I could see, but we hear, like, helicopters above us.
This all seems to have been concentrated in Watts Hall. Are you anywhere near that?
I'm about like a 2-3 minute walk from Watts Hall.
Okay, and this seems to have started now about an hour and a half ago. Have you heard anything, seen anything that would give us any indication as to what went on?
Well, this morning I got up at about 9:40, and then I got the text alert from the Buckeye Alert at 9:50. And then ever since, like, I was about to leave for class because I have class at 10:20, and I got the alert, so I stayed inside my dorm. But we haven't really heard anything, just like a bunch of sirens, like about a half an hour ago, and now just the helicopters above us.
Yeah. Have you been able to hear from any friends or anybody that knows what's going on?
My friend, who is actually from home, I'm from New York, she goes here too, but she lives on South Campus. She said that she was about to go on a run, and she didn't end up going over here. She turned around because she, like, heard all the sirens and stuff.
It's the clearest indication something's going on.
Yeah.
Allie, you getting calls from friends, family, anybody making sure you're okay?
Yeah, just about everybody.
Right. They're telling people not to call students, to text them only, because you don't want to give up any hiding places as police continue to search for any additional suspects. But people who aren't there have to be concerned.
Yeah, of course.
Allie, stay well, stay safe, and check in with us as you learn any more. We'd be curious as to what's been going on. Allie's a freshman at OSU and staying put like so many other students there, listening to the helicopters above and the sirens on the ground. The police have concentrated their efforts on Watts Hall. It's where an eyewitness told us he understood that a fire alarm had been pulled, that students were gathered outside, and then a car came screaming around the corner, mowed down students, or tried to anyway. And then there were gunshots, possibly a stabbing of a professor. We're still waiting for the authorities to confirm what exactly happened, but we have understood that 8 people have been taken to the hospital. Why, we don't know, and the conditions we also do not know. But we know that Ohio's Governor John Kasich, Senator Rob Portman have all tweeted their thoughts and prayers to the Ohio State University community. But again, it's not clear exactly what went on. We only have these eyewitness accounts telling us that gunshots were heard and that they've seen a body on the ground. And the Columbus Public Safety Department tells us that one suspect is down and the search for others is still ongoing. I'm Aaron Katursky. You're listening to live coverage from ABC News. ABC News consultant Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, is with us. Students are staying put as per instructions, but it's been almost an hour now, Steve, since the school has said anything. What are we to make of what's happening?
I think the investigation is being conducted, and that's why there may be a kind of a slowing down of what we are seeing, not a slowing down of the investigation or law enforcement's response, but they are probably talking to all the different witnesses, as we've been doing on air, speaking to people that are providing what they saw. Law enforcement is talking to everybody that they can get their hands on who had some kind of observation of what occurred when either the fire alarm went off, when the car came up, when the guy got out with what appears to be a weapon, and maybe even, as we've been hearing, reports of a professor being struck by a machete or some type of knife. Law enforcement is doing that investigation right now. In addition to, if that suspect is dead, they are working on identifying who that suspect is, background, profile, whole 9 yards, as fast as possible, because they're trying to now determine how many other suspects are there, if there were others, and what was the motivation of that suspect or suspects, and will that dictate how they proceed from there as far as continuing on with their response there at OSU, how they make entry and go through and clear and so on. All of that is factoring into law enforcement strategy and the response. I can imagine right now that's what they are thinking.
Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant on the law enforcement response to Ohio State University, where 8 people have been transported to the hospital after some kind of an incident involving either guns or knives or maybe both. Eyewitnesses told us they've heard shots fired. Now all they're hearing are sirens and helicopters overhead as the authorities try to determine what went on and whether there are any additional suspects involved. There is at least one suspect that is down, dead, shot dead by Columbus police, and we are waiting to hear a little bit more as to what happened. As we do, Steve, we're reminded that this is a time when holiday violence it gets some additional attention. There had recently been that joint FBI-DHS bulletin about this time of year generally, but a quick check shows that there hasn't been a call to attack specifically a college campus. But, I mean, this is sort of anything at any time seems to be possible.
Absolutely. I mean, they're always interested in targeting large gatherings or places where there are large crowds. If the pulling of the fire alarm was part of a coordinated attack to generate that kind of large gathering, by pulling the alarm, students exit the building, and then a vehicle gets up on top of the curb and goes after them, then that would be in line with what the terrorist organizations would be thinking and would be pushing out as far as their propaganda to their sympathizers and their supporters. So, when we think about large gatherings and, large events, we are thinking about the Ohio State-Michigan game. We are thinking about malls or celebrations for New Year's Eve and so on. We're thinking about the Nice attack that occurred on July 14th, which was when they were celebrating Bastille Day, and there were a lot of people there. So those are the types of things that we are thinking about. And as John mentioned earlier, law enforcement, nowadays, I mean, there's so much security, for the Ohio State-Michigan game. They have that locked down. They know that that's a target, and there's going to be a lot of security there to ensure that an attack doesn't happen. But when you have something that could be as creative as somebody going and pulling the alarm, creating the large crowd, and now they attack, I mean, that's another dynamic that the terrorists were looking to create that we have to look into as far as this investigation and how do you move forward.
Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant. We have just been told from the Ohio State University Emergency Management Department that the shelter in place has been lifted. The scene is now secure. All classes are canceled. on the Columbus campus for the remainder of the day. So it appears that whatever happened is now over. The area around 19th and College Avenue is closed. That's Watts Hall. And we are looking at a quick rundown of the buildings that are going to be closed. They don't mean much to anyone who isn't familiar with the campus, but a number of buildings in the area of 19th and College. And the alert now has been lifted. The shelter in place has been lifted, so students are free to move about, but a number of buildings are going to be closed, notably Watts Hall, where all of this seems to have unfolded within the last couple of hours. The word came just a few minutes ago from Ohio State University Emergency Management that the shelter in place has been lifted, but there has still been no confirmation as to what exactly unfolded. To repeat to you what eyewitnesses have told us, this all started a couple of hours ago when a fire alarm was pulled in one of the buildings. Students had left the building, were gathered outside, when this eyewitness says a Honda Civic came screaming around the corner and tried to jump the curb and mow down the students. From there, the driver gets out, brandishes some kind of a weapon, and then the precise timing becomes a little bit unclear. This eyewitness said he moved away and heard shots fired. Other eyewitnesses said that a professor had been stabbed. So it's not clear what motivated any of this or specifically what kind of an attack this was. But the shelter in place has now been lifted and the scene is now secure. One suspect is dead and police have concluded their search for additional suspects. Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant with us. Steve, as you now know that the scene is secure, police have made what they believe to be, I guess, pretty quick work of this.
Yes, exactly. It looks like they were able to go in and search the area, clear it, no other suspects, and through the investigation, through interview of witnesses, they were able to determine that that individual in the vehicle who came out and brandished a weapon was hopefully the only suspect, or if there were others, they have maybe neutralized it. We haven't, received any reports of that, but it sounds like the situation has been resolved, and now it's a matter of ensuring whoever has been injured receives medical attention and the investigation. That the investigation is going to move fast and furious at this point.
We're still waiting to find out exactly what happened, whether there were shots fired, whether anybody was shot, whether somebody was attacked with a knife. We do know that 8 people have been taken to the hospital, according to the Columbus, Ohio Fire Department, with injuries that were not specified, and their conditions were also not specified. But the attacker, if that's in fact who he was, the aggressor in all of this, was shot and killed by police, and an eyewitness saw his body covered with a tarp. Police had briefly conducted a search for an additional suspect, but now they say that the scene is secure and the shelter in place has been lifted. But it's still not exactly clear what this was. Steve, any last thoughts here as we prepare to conclude our live coverage as to how this investigation moves forward?
Well, the first thing, of course, they're going to look at is, was this a terrorist attack or was this not? The law enforcement, especially the FBI and ATF, they're going to take the tact of they are going to look at it as a potential terrorist attack until it's proven otherwise. Because if it is a terrorist attack, then that ties into all kinds of different aspects of international investigations that are being conducted, international intelligence gathering that's going on, because ISIS is an international terrorist organization. And so that also could have impact within the United States, because it's well known that there are a number of investigations going on throughout the country. And would this type of attack trigger another one somewhere else in the U.S., somewhere else in the world? So that's probably the biggest question right now that needs to be answered. Was this a terrorist attack?
Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant. That investigation is just now getting underway in Columbus, Ohio, where the campus of The Ohio State University is open, but classes have been canceled. A shelter-in-place order that lasted about 2 hours has been lifted. At least 8 people have been taken to the hospital for unspecified injuries. We don't know their conditions. We don't even know how they were injured. But eyewitnesses have told us of hearing gunshots, possibly seeing a knife, maybe one professor stabbed, maybe some people shot. All we know is a suspect has been shot and killed, and police have concluded their search for additional suspects, so the shelter-in-place order has been lifted. I'm Aaron Katursky. You've been listening to live coverage from ABC News.
ABC News honored winner for the third straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television and Radio. ABC News, America's #1 news choice.